New questions about hundreds of parents who may have been deported from the U.S. before being reunited with their children, and a new deadline for the Justice Department.
When we stood here and we looked to the other side and they said like they have a family on the other side and they come here, and it raises a lot of questions about the wall and their place here and in Israel and Palestine.
A local student exchange asked young people to contemplate the borders that define them through the lens of another culture. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. The Justice Department back in a San Diego courtroom today, answering questions about parents who were separated from their children at the border. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero has an update.
Just in the courtroom where Judge Dana Sabra says it appears the government will meet the deadline for reunification when it comes to parents who have been deemed eligible. That's about 1,600 of the total. Already more than 1,000 parents who were separated from their children have been reunited, with a couple hundred more cleared for reunification and transportation pending. The judge called this a remarkable achievement and said the government should be commended for its efforts. However, about 463 parents appear to have been removed from the United States. The judge called this unpleasant and deeply troubling. They appear to have been removed without their children, and currently the government is trying to locate them, as well as nonprofits who are searching for them in Central America to try to get them reunified with their children. The judge ordered the government to produce lists of these people who were removed without their children by tomorrow at noon, even if those lists are incomplete. He also said he wants a list of parents who waived their right for reunification with their children. There's currently some questions as to why parents would waive that right, and the ACLU wants to make sure that parents are making informed decisions and wants to be in touch with those families. So the government is also expected to produce that list by tomorrow at noon. From downtown San Diego, Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Senator Dianne Feinstein is speaking out about the conditions she says she and her staff saw at a Border Patrol holding station in El Centro. In a letter to DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, Feinstein says family units with children as young as 3 were sleeping on the concrete floor with no padding. Detainees, including juveniles, did not have adequate access to drinking water and lacked basic hygiene products. Members of Feinstein's staff recently visited the facility. The senator also says detainees are being held longer than is allowed by law. During this time of heightened immigration enforcement, San Diego Unified is stepping up protections. As part of a statewide effort, district officials say they will implement stronger safeguards for immigrant students. The goal is to let them know they have a right to a public education, no matter their immigration status.
Unfortunately, under the Trump administration, we see a federal government that is willing to, threaten the security, frankly, of children and their families. And so what is important, for us as a school district to do is to make sure that all of our families feel safe and secure in sending their kids to school.
According to the California Attorney General's office, roughly 250,000 California public school students do not have legal documentation to be in the country. This week, a group of Israeli and Palestinian teenagers are in San Diego, learning how to work through conflicts and become better leaders. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman tells us the group just visited a U.S. site of national controversy.
Each year, the nonprofit Hands of Peace brings together teens from the Middle East to discuss the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
We fight sometimes, and it is a really complicated subject to talk about, but we do sit down and talk about different problems that we go through, discrimination, and all that.
Organizers say taking participants to the U.S. Mexico border at Friendship Park helps them see how countries can be so close yet seem so different.
Being here at the border is really, I have conflicted feelings. It's so different from the two sides. You can see people on the Mexican side are having fun and swimming, and then here there's no one. Americans and Mexicans have a lot in common, but they also are so different. and the way they look at the border is different from each point, and the same thing goes through the conflict, and like Israelis, how they look at the wall and how Palestinians look at it.
The borders are very different from our border. For me personally, I think that the wall is very, very different than our borders. When we stood here and we looked to the other side and they said like they have a family on the other side and they come here, and it raises a lot of questions about the wall and their place here and in Israel and Palestine.
Each year, around 30 teens make the trip to the U.S., staying with American host families.
It's a really difficult, challenging program for them where they leave very transformed. Maybe, they have challenges, but they come out on the other side feeling empowered, feeling like they know how to use their voice and maybe even be a leader in their community back home.
After getting a chance to sit down and talk, many of the teens find they agree on a lot.
At the end of the day, we have a lot in common when it comes to food. We also have a lot in common when it comes to pain, because we both suffer from the same pain at the same conflict.
Those who graduate the program have an opportunity to take a similar trip visiting Israel and the West Bank. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
It felt a bit like a sauna in parts of San Diego County during day 2 of a heat wave. Aaron Calandra shows us just how hot it will get in our first look at weather.
Good afternoon. I hope you had a day where you could stay cool because we are seeing exceptionally hot temperatures. If you're in the red, then you are facing an excessive heat warning. And if you're right along the coast here in San Diego, a heat advisory. That means it is exceptionally hot, even dangerous for a lot of people. So San Diego, we are challenging the record today. 85, it was set back in 2006. And today we'll reach 84. Chula Vista breaking the record of 2014 by a couple of degrees. And look at Ramona, it's hot at 107. So make sure you are staying cool, stay hydrated, check on the elderly neighbors, the kiddos and the pets, make sure everyone is doing okay. It's not just California, it's all of the Southwest here. Some of these temperatures, Vegas, 113. It's going to be hot on the Strip. Phoenix, 116. And even in LA, they're seeing temperatures challenging the record of 103. I'll have your full forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
State energy officials are asking people to voluntarily conserve energy during this week's heat wave during the hours of 5 and 9 p.m. This includes refraining from running heavy appliances and adjusting the air conditioner a few degrees higher. Experts who run the power grid with California's independent operating system say higher temperatures are creating a larger demand without enough supply.
We're not seeing the cool down overnight, so we start off with a much larger load on the system from overnight, and then we add on top of that the regular daytime load. And that means then we start pushing our system to its maximum capabilities.
Nearby states are also experiencing high temperatures, and that's taking up even more power supply. State officials don't expect any energy shortages this week, but say residents should be prepared just in case. High temperatures and low humidity levels aren't helping fire crews get a handle on multiple wildfires burning around the state. Authorities are closing parts of Yosemite National Park starting tomorrow because of a nearby wildfire. The Ferguson fire has burned about 57 square miles over the past 2 weeks. Fire crews have it about 25% contained.
The Ferguson fire is burning in extremely steep and rugged terrain with little or no access to roads, making the firefighting difficult and requiring heavy aircraft support when we can get those aircraft in there due to the smoke conditions.
Officials say the park isn't in immediate danger, but the closures will help firefighters do their work without tourist traffic. About 1,000 campground and hotel reservations have been canceled. The closure is expected to last through Sunday. This week's heat wave could also drive up the price of lemons. New numbers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture show the decline in lemon crops have driven up wholesale prices by nearly 40%. Locally, prices have jumped from about $38 a carton to about $54 a carton. Agricultural officials say this week's triple-digit temperatures could also result in more losses from both lemon and avocado crops statewide. There's a spike in sexual assault reports in California prisons. State prison inmates filed more than 1,100 complaints alleging sexual assault or harassment in 2017. That's a 29% increase over 2016. The annual report also found the alleged abuser was a prison staffer in about half of the complaints. California Department of Corrections and officials tell KPBS News investigations revealed about 400 of the reported cases were unfounded. The median home price in San Diego set a record last month, reaching $575,000. That's a $30,000 increase from a year ago. The numbers from CoreLogic show that prices are up, but sales slowed by about 9%. An analyst says low inventory and affordability likely contributed to last month's slowdown. Years of community planning may get abandoned in an effort to address San Diego's housing shortage. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says county supervisors are considering allowing developers to build thousands of homes in areas currently off limits.
High on a hillside in North County's unincorporated area west of Interstate 15, you can see new houses springing up on the lots below.
They broke ground about 2 years ago,
Elfin Forest resident J.P. Theberge says the local community agreed to the 700 homes under construction, but developers are now proposing 700 more on land that was supposed to be protected from development. And he says none of the homes will be affordable, even to most middle-class families.
Some of these projects should have at least 20% of their stock affordable to the median income. Right at the moment, none of them are affordable to the median income.
The homes in Harmony Grove Village are selling for between $600,000 and $900,000. The developer did not respond to questions about how well they are selling. In the last year, the county has approved slightly more than 1,000 new housing permits, but is poised to open the door to 10,000 more in the next 3 months. Theberge says the supervisors are under such pressure to encourage new development, they've found a way to circumvent a limit on how many changes they can make to their general plan for growth.
State law does limit the amendments to the general plan to 4 per year. So what they've done is they've come up with a technique or a tactic, depending how you call it, where they are going to hear multiple general plans at once, and then they're going to treat that as one amendment.
This is one of the pieces of property that the County Board of Supervisors will be voting on. Developers find it cheaper to buy land like this, which is cheap precisely because it is not zoned for development, and then change the zoning. And this is why years of community planning is now being discarded.
The builders are ready to step up. It's just a question of whether the county permits it.
Gary London is advising the developers who are applying for permission to build in these areas.
There's no question that there's an efficiency in building large rancho projects. The problem is today that most developments are smaller because we've run out of land. In fact, the only land that's available, whether it's zoned correctly or not, is in the unincorporated areas. That's why there's so much pressure to try to make some of that land available for development.
London says developers cannot get approval even in urban areas that are zoned for development. And he says young families don't want to live in urban apartments. They want single-family homes.
The greatest need that we have right now are for families that currently live here that are facing this crisis of, can I continue to live here and raise a family, or should I move out of town?
Commissioners, good morning. Thank you for having my name is Deborah Rosen.
At a recent county planning meeting, Deborah Rosen was one of those who pleaded for more housing.
And I have to tell you, I lost my daughter at 25 years old. And I lost her to Idaho. And it was really hard. When she left, I said to her, I will help you with a down payment here in San Diego. She said, Mom, I can't afford a mortgage. You can give me a down payment, but I can't afford the mortgage. And it's because there's not enough homes for sale here.
Well, we have changing needs right now in the county of San Diego, and it's up to our County Board of Supervisors to address those changing needs.
London dismisses concerns that the new houses are not affordable. He calls them attainable. He says North County is where new jobs are being created, and it's time the county let go of its general plan.
Because it was a bad plan.
For anyone to suggest that the general plan is a bad plan is denying 10 years of diligence and thoughtful consideration that went into designing and developing the plan. And there was consensus amongst all the stakeholders that we were creating the housing that we needed and that we were creating the transportation infrastructure that we needed.
Nicole Capretz is with San Diego's Climate Action Campaign.
Yeah.
She says sustainable planning encourages infill development and transit like the rapid bus service up Interstate 15, not giving wholesale approval to developments in far-flung parts of the county, generating longer commutes.
Not only is it troubling that the county is considering major sprawl projects to add housing where it's not supposed to go, but it's even more troubling that the county is abusing its power and undermining their own process that they set in place to ensure that there was thoughtful consideration of any amendments to their general plan. They're throwing that out the window and just accelerating the adoption of these sprawl projects.
The Harmony Grove projects are just the first of 7 major amendments to the general plan supervisors are poised to approve this summer. Theberge says if they really want to address the shortage of affordable housing, they should require some affordable housing in return for granting the waivers.
So the idea is if you're going to give away sound planning and kind of throw the whole process away, basically, because that's what this is. 10,000 houses is basically saying we don't care about the general plan anymore. Let's just randomly build as much as we can everywhere and anywhere at all costs. Then you need to at least secure something from the developers on that.
The supervisors will consider more than 5,000 new homes in North County and more than 4,000 in Otay Mesa. So far, the supervisors have not required that any of these new houses be affordable, even for most middle-class San Diegans. Alison St. John, KPBS News.
Our media partner iNewsSource has delved into the political party spending and how it's impacting the race to replace County Supervisor Ron Roberts. Democrat Nathan Fletcher and Republican Bonnie DeManis are vying for the seat. Today, I spoke with iNewsSource reporter Jill Castellano about how political parties are getting involved. Jill, welcome.
Thank you.
So in your report, you find that the Democratic Party has spent nearly $1 million backing former Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher. Why is this race so important?
Well, it's important because this is the chance that the Democrats have been waiting for to get a seat on the Board of Supervisors. This is a group of 5 people who run the County of San Diego. They're responsible for transportation, housing and homelessness issues, public health, and there are 5 of them, and they're all Republicans. 4 of them have actually been in office since the 1990s because they don't have term limits, except now there are new term limits on the supervisors, and this seat, which covers most of the city of San Diego, is open to 2 new candidates for the first time in literally a generation. So the Democratic Party is going to do whatever it can to get Nathan Fletcher in that seat.
But the Republican Party is not giving up this seat without a fight. You are also reporting that it is actually backing former DA Bonnie DeManis. How much has the Republican Party spent?
Right. The Republican Party certainly is getting involved as well. They've spent almost $200,000 supporting Bonnie DeManis. We know that both parties will really step up when it's a race that's important to them, and we can definitely expect that both parties are going to continue to spend money come this fall.
And is there a limit to how much the parties can spend supporting these candidates?
There is a limit. The County of San Diego has been trying for many years to try to cut back on this spending by political parties, but they haven't been successful in doing that. They do have a limit that says political parties can't donate more than $26,000 to county supervisors candidates like Nathan Fletcher. However, there's this big exception in the law that basically says if you run a political party, you can spend however much money you want to telling registered members of your party who to vote for. So the Democratic Party can spend however much money they want to telling registered Democrats, go out and vote for Nathan Fletcher, and they don't have any limits for doing that. I talked to Bob Stern for this story. He's a campaign finance expert. He co-authored the Political Reform Act of California, and he talked a little bit about this. Here's what he said.
You have strong contribution limits in San Diego in terms of how much somebody can give to a candidate directly. But what the parties have found is a loophole, a legal loophole, by the way. Nothing illegal about this.
So it's not just the parties that are jumping into the campaigning. You also report that Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher, who is Nathan Fletcher's wife, is also supporting his campaign. What has been her role?
Yeah, this is really interesting because Nathan Fletcher has gotten more money from the Democratic Party in financial support than anyone else has gotten from the political parties this decade. He's gotten so much money. And when you look at the flip side, you see that Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher, who's a state assemblywoman married to Nathan Fletcher, has been the largest donor to the Democratic Party. She's contributed 3 times more than anyone else this election cycle to that party. So what's happening here is she's kind of able to use some of her connections in Sacramento that donate money to her campaign, and then she can donate money to the political party, and then the party, totally legally, is allowed to decide how to spend that money. I talked to Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher for this story. She was supportive. She defended the way that she used her money in this race. Nathan Fletcher was as well. However, Bonnie Dumanis, who is the former district attorney running against him, spoke about it with me as well, and this is what she had to say.
Well, it doesn't surprise me for Nathan, since his wife is chair of the Appropriations Committee and is doing the raising of the money for him, really. So she has unlimited money in her coffers as she runs for assembly. She can take that money and then put it directly into the party.
So very interesting. We'll see how this all plays out in the November election. iNews Source reporter Jill Castellano, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. A debate brewing in San Diego's port has some residents at odds over signs, but not just any signs. The port is considering putting information kiosks along the waterfront. The kiosks would give you information ranging from directions to restaurant suggestions, but they'd also take data from the location services on your cell phone, and the information would be sold to advertisers. The Downtown San Diego Partnership supports the plan.
Why not test out the technology to ensure we are staying on the forefront of innovation and ensuring we are America's greatest city?
Since the port doesn't collect tax dollars, port commissioners are exploring new ways to generate revenue.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Trump administration offers billions in relief to U.S. farmers hurt by the president's trade war. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Another hot day in San Diego, and it's going to get even hotter tomorrow. Aaron Calandra has more on the heat wave in tonight's forecast.
Well, we're seeing another day of record-challenging, even record-breaking heat. It is dangerously hot out here. If you're in the red, then you are under an excessive heat warning. And if you're in the orange right along the coast, a heat advisory, and that means everyone needs to be paying attention to everyone around them and themselves. Make sure you're staying hydrated and cool because these temperatures, again, they can be deadly. Let's take a peek at the records today. San Diego about reaching the record. 84 degrees, that's the forecast. The record's 85, so awfully close. Other regions like Chula Vista breaking the record. 87 today, 81 was the old record. And look at Ramona, up to 107. Yikes, very steamy conditions. And not just here, but widespread. Phoenix tying their record of 116. Los Angeles close to their record of 103. So it is hot for a lot of people. As far as precipitation, we're really not seeing much. There's still some monsoon moisture lingering around, but we are going to stay nice and dry here across Southern California. You could see a couple of showers peeking into places like Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, places like that, but not us. So tonight, Oceanside, 69 degrees, San Diego at 72. Now, what's interesting is our high temperature for this time of year in San Diego is normally 75, so our low is going to be awfully close to that tonight. We will see some fog around lingering into the morning hours, but intense heat, that's really the story, especially for our friends in those interior areas. Make sure you're able to cool down again, stay cool, check on the neighbors. The temperatures tomorrow, they'll be warm, soaring in the 100s. Borrego Springs reaching 117, San Diego at 84, Chula Vista 87, and Ramona at 107. Now, along the coast for the next couple of days, we are going to be steady above average in the 80s, although we'll be getting a bit cooler by the weekend in the low 80s. Inland, again, 105 for Wednesday, and then slowly getting cooler. By Sunday, we'll be back down to the 80s. In the mountains, it's warm, 90s and 80s. And then across the deserts, it is just ridiculously hot. So again, be safe. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra.
A year-long celebration kicked off over the weekend at the Kennedy Space Center to mark 50 years since humans first landed on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Former Apollo astronauts gathered at the gala event and reflected on their missions.
We have to realize that this is a historic moment in the evolution of humanity, in the evolution of life on this planet. Human beings and the machines that we have created are enabling us, have enabled us to move out from the womb of Earth, out from Mother Earth into the larger cosmos. That is an amazing thing when you think about all the life we know being on this little planet Earth, and we now are beginning to move out.
The first Apollo mission took place in 1968 with the first moon landing in 1969. NASA last sent astronauts to the moon in 1972. Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, emergency relief for farmers, the president's efforts to blunt the impact of tariffs on America's growers. And on Midday Edition, an update on mental health resources after Tri-City Medical shuts down a key psychiatric unit. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.